Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast and talking about the contract extensions, the contract negotiations around the quarterbacks in the last segment. I wanted to now bring up Brandon Aiyuk and the wide receiver market and how that is sort of turning out so far. With that, there's been a lot of talk so far, a lot of reports saying that the negotiations are going some way. The 49ers feel that it is positive, where we've seen a lot more pessimistic views from Brandon Aiyuk than positive. So who do you trust? Who do you think is in the right here? Well, I think we finally got our answer after this TikTok video that was released today. It's funny, I was mentioning this before in a production meeting we had before this show. Obviously, in the morning, I had my topics laid out on what I was going to talk about, but then this news came out and something else I was going to talk about later on in the show came out, and then I had to rearrange everything. And I had to talk about this today because it was so ridiculous that, I just had to mention it. I had to give my thoughts on it because it happened right after the production meeting I had this morning, and it had to do around Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk so far has been saying, or at least his trainer and everybody around him have been saying that $30 million is the floor of what a contract extension would look like for Brandon Aiyuk, of what he would want in his next contract. Based on what he has done so far, he believes he's earned at least that in the marketplace for the wide receivers. So is that something that the 49ers can fit into their salary cap? Well, I've been doubtful about this deal for a long time. After March went by and almost a little bit of April, I thought this was really just starting to slow up. And also, you give an extension to Juwan Jennings. You give Christian McCaffrey more money. If you really value Brandon Aiyuk, I think this would have been done first. But obviously, there's something there. At least in my mind, that's how I was seeing it. But you also had his trainer saying that Brandon Aiyuk, his feelings were growing to be pessimistic about an extension with the 49ers. Then also you had this past weekend, Jeremy Fowler reporting on the situation, saying that the contract talks have stalled out. The 49ers are looking like they're not willing to meet the market value for Brandon Aiyuk. There's not a lot of optimism around the deal. And for right now, they're going to wait and see what these next 5 to 6 weeks entail for the contract talks to potentially move on. But for right now, there's nothing really going on with that. So everything now is sort of starting to point in that direction. But the final nail in the coffin for me was seeing this TikTok video. I can't show it, obviously, but I will just describe it. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it by now, or you could just find it anywhere. I'm sure, again, it's everywhere by now. But basically, the context of this video was that today, you saw it on a TikTok. I think it was on Brandon Aiyuk's TikTok or on somebody's. You saw Brandon Aiyuk on a FaceTime call with Commander's starting quarterback, or presumed starting quarterback, Jayden Daniels. They are friends from their Arizona State University days. They played together for a season, so they are friends. They are pretty close. They were just on a FaceTime call, nothing too major going on. And then in the conversation, you see Jayden Daniels ask Brandon Aiyuk, what happened? What happened, bro? What's the call for? What do you need to tell me? Then Brandon Aiyuk responds by saying, this is the most important bit. He said, they said they don't want me back. Jayden Daniels asks, are you serious? Are you for real? Then Brandon Aiyuk responds with, I swear. Not telling a joke, nothing. This is for real. Obviously, he's talking about the 49ers, right? They say they don't want me back. The contract negotiations have been going on for this long. Who else would they be at this point, right? Who else would he be referring to? They don't want me back. Obviously, he's mentioning the 49ers. And Jayden Daniels, if you see the video, overly excited. There has been no connection so far with Jayden Daniels or anything he has to do with the contract negotiations, but very excited for a friend that's just asking what is going on. But I'm going to get to that point in just a second. You see in the video, overly excited for the news that Brandon Aiyuk is being for real. So then you dig further into it, and then for me, that just means the 49ers almost have accepted defeat in this negotiation, in this situation with Brandon Aiyuk. They may be willing now to entertain some trade offers if more teams see this video. Obviously, everyone's going to see it. Once more teams see this video, and now they're thinking the 49ers are willing to do something if Brandon Aiyuk is telling Jayden Daniels that they don't want him back. Did they 100% tell him, confirmed, that they don't want him back? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Brandon Aiyuk is maybe reading too much into it, but I'm taking it as they did. Like Jeremy Fowler said, according to some sources, not a lot of optimism. The contract talks have stalled out, so you combine that with Brandon Aiyuk saying this, I think there is legitimate reason to believe that the 49ers are probably 90%, 85% to accepting that this deal is not going to get done, and more teams are going to look at this and say, well, maybe they're going to entertain a trade now. Maybe you now have the Steelers, the Jaguars, the Broncos, anybody else that needs a wide receiver, the Bills, entertaining trades now with the 49ers because they know the amount of money Brandon Aiyuk is asking does not fit with what the 49ers have in mind. Reportedly, they have offered him around $26 to $27 million, but obviously Brandon Aiyuk values himself a lot higher than that. And now I get into the point with Jaden Daniels being overly excited. Are the Washington Commanders now entering these conversations with the 49ers and seeing if they could get something done? Their general manager, Adam Peters, he comes from the San Francisco 49ers front office. He has prior relationships to that organization, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if, as a general manager now, you reach out to your former team and just ask around, hey, maybe what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk? I saw the video. Is there any legitimacy to that? Are you guys really thinking of doing this, moving on from him? What's going on? You have that connection already. You have that in already with the 49ers. Why wouldn't you inquire at least a little bit more? And I think it's a perfect time to really think about Washington as a very likely candidate to try and trade for Brandon Aiyuk, especially because I said it, I think, last show on Friday or on Thursday or some point last week that the Commanders have done a great job this offseason of rebuilding, retooling some of that offense, but I would have loved if they got another weapon for Jaden Daniels. I don't want a lot of pressure on Jaden Daniels so far in his first year. In a very tough division with the Eagles, the Giants, and the Cowboys, I don't think a lot of pressure on him would be very beneficial for his development. You saw sort of what happened with RG3 and having a quarterback of that skill set and that much talent, how it all sort of broke down. He got injured a lot, carrying that organization. I don't think they definitely don't want that to happen. So to alleviate some of that, I thought they needed another playmaker. And now this door opens up, and I think it's too good of an opportunity to pass up on at this point in time. The combination, the potential wide receiver duo of Terry McLaurin and Brandon Aiyuk would be super exciting, super beneficial for Jaden Daniels. One of the most electrifying duos in at least the NFC. You can make a case for the entire NFL, but then you also have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A bunch of others that are just escaping my mind, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's a great opportunity for the Commanders now to really start thinking about this. Does Jaden Daniels have enough power, enough command already with the Washington Commanders to make such a request? I don't know. That is an internal issue, I guess, but Jaden Daniels seemed overly excited, and I can't help but think now that the Commanders are in a great opportunity to try and ask a little bit to the 49ers what is going on with Brandon Aiyuk. And also, it does bring up the question a little bit to sort of, relax all the feelings, all the hype that a lot of fan bases probably have now that Brandon Aiyuk might be up on the trade market. How much does this drop his value potentially for the San Francisco 49ers? That was one of the things that I thought of right away. When you have a asset so valuable like Brandon Aiyuk, something that a lot of people want, but they know they can't have, it makes them want to obviously offer a lot more. But now that Brandon Aiyuk has not only said things on his social media, on his Instagram about the contract negotiations not going well, you have the trainer, you have Jeremy Fowler, now you have this video, now you're really starting to believe around the NFL that, this isn't going to work out. It's only a matter of time before Aiyuk and the 49ers, part ways eventually, whether that be free agency or whether that be via a trade. It's not going to work out, so let's just buy our time and offer less because, they're not going to work anything out. So there's no point in over-offering anything if they're just going to part ways anyway. It just depends on when it's going to happen. I think it has dropped his value just a little bit slightly because the news is now out, and it stinks for the 49ers because they really held on to this idea that they could keep Brandon Aiyuk. Why wouldn't you? But at the same time, they might have overestimated how much, potential there was in these contract negotiations that they've overweighted. And now Brandon Aiyuk keeps putting things out there and, airing out the truth a little bit too much. And the value is dropping now for Brandon Aiyuk. And now you're not going to have teams offering as much as they would have because they know the truth around the situation. And if I were to guess, The Steelers are probably going to be voiced a lot. I mentioned before, Denver was in contract or in trade talks with the 49ers around the trade deadline. The Jaguars were also close in talks with the 49ers over trades. And I think the Washington Commanders would make the perfect fit as well for Brandon Aiyuk to team up with Terry. You already have that connection there with Jaden Daniels. They seem to be very good friends. If you don't think that has an influence, I think that's pretty naive to think that. So I think it opens up a lot more doors. There's going to be a lot more conversation around this because I think it's just a further development in these contract talks. I assume the 49ers will, deny a lot of these allegations, but I think they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place now on trying to figure out anything that ends in a positive for them to at least try and get something out of this deal. You don't want to lose him for free if you just keep waiting until free agency next year and he just walks. I think at this point, the 49ers and the league is sort of forcing their hand a little bit to deal him at least. Just take the best possible offer. Maybe it's not what you expected, but you have to get something back from Brandon Aiyuk if you can't keep him. If you've already accepted that you can't extend them, you have to get something back to at least salvage something from the talent that Brandon Aiyuk has given you so far. And it's not going to deteriorate the 49ers. It's not like it's the end of the world, honestly. Their roster is very talented already. They drafted a wide receiver. A lot of people thought that drafting Ricky Pearsall was another hint that Brandon Aiyuk could be gone, but again, the 49ers denied it. But I think now it's just becoming more and more evident that this is sort of coming to a conclusion. I think it's probably going to happen during training camp or before the regular season, but more exciting news could be on the way regarding Brandon Aiyuk. I'm not holding out any hope that it could be the Steelers, but someone's going to get him. I think it's only a matter of time now before he moves on, and I can't wait to see where he goes and how everybody reacts to it because it's certainly going to be must-see when it does come out. But on that note, we're going to take a break, and when we return, more running back rankings around the NFL, this time in the AFC South, talking about the Titans, the Jaguars, the Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts, and how they all stack up against each other in the running back department. That is coming up right after this break, so we'll be right back.